Hello, welcome back to the Peak Financial Planning YouTube page. Today is going to be part 2 of our investing series of videos. This is a broad, basic overview of investing and the considerations that go into it. This is not meant to be super specific or super tailored. And this is part 2. So if you haven't watched part 1, that was last week, I'll include the card up here. Last week's video was 4 things, stop rushing to invest, 4 things to consider before putting your money to work. Today is going to be the broader, higher level subjects of what is investing, why invest, and where to invest and how to invest. Hopefully I'll get through all these in 10 minutes. If I don't, we'll pick up with a part 3 next week. All right, so let's jump right in. So what is investing? Okay, investing is different from savings. That's the first thing to understand. Savings is when you have more money than you can spend. So you're either saving, you're making more than you're spending, or you have money that you have accumulated over time, or you inherit some money, and that money sits in cash. That's saving. Investing is putting that money to work by trying to have it grow at a pace that beats inflation. Inflation eats at the value of your dollar because costs of things around you go up while your dollar's value stays the same. $1 is always $1, but the price of a gallon of milk or the price of a gallon of gasoline may go up over time. So investing is money working for you. And the idea to understand here is that it involves risk. There's a risk-reward spectrum, and there's a trade-off. You always have to evaluate probabilities of, is this safe enough for me, but still producing return or growth, or do I have to take more risk? And we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, skipping that ahead. So let's talk about the risk-reward spectrum briefly for a second. Like I said, there's always a trade-off. You have to take more risk to get a higher reward. And the question always is, how much risk is the right amount of risk? And the way to evaluate that is to plan. You have to think about, what is that money going to be used for? When is it going to be used? And how much growth will you need in order to actually have the monies you'll need by the time you need it? Once you have that answer, now you can work backwards and say, okay, how much risk is required for me to take on in order to achieve that outcome? Now, you might have a time frame that is not achievable because it requires way too much risk in order to get the investment results you need in order to achieve that outcome. That's a different story. But the way you evaluate it is by planning ahead. And there is some complexity to this, so it's worth considering. But let's go through some examples here of the risk-reward spectrum of what are just examples of types of investments that are lower risk, medium risk, higher risk, among many others. This is by no means a comprehensive list. On the lower risk, lower return, shorter time frame, you have what are called cash examples. And those would be things like a CD at the bank, or a money market account, or a savings account. These things are highly liquid for the most part, other than the CD. That means you can get your money out of them, but they don't produce a great amount of return. And in most cases, this on the left, are not going to outpace inflation. But there are many cases to be made for them. This video, like I said, is a broad overview. We're not going to go case specific. The middle example here, bonds. Bonds are basically IOUs to the government or to a company where you loan them money and they pay you interest on the loan, essentially. And these are what you call moderate risk. So if it's actually, in some cases, you consider it no risk, like a U.S. government bond has typically been considered a zero risk investment. But the idea is very similar to cash. You might get, you have a little more access to the money. You can sell bonds if you need the money you need to get the money out of them, but you'll get interest in return for your loan. And in some cases it will outpace inflation, but barely. And in some cases it won't. So you're moving slightly out on the risk spectrum in order to get more reward. And the question is it enough reward for the risk? It's an individual question. And then on the right side here, you have what are called equity examples. Equity is a fancy term for stocks or ownership in public companies. And again, like I said, this list is not comprehensive. There are tons of other types of investments that are not included on this specific slide. But equity examples would be small, medium, or large companies, stocks, foreign stocks, oil, gold, grains, those are commodities, or real estate/real estate investment trusts, which are also available in a brokerage account. And those would be considered higher risk And higher risk means that the price or the actual dollar value of that investment fluctuates more, and are typically more suitable for longer timeframes. And the reason is because longer timeframes tends to smooth out the volatility. If you can imagine that the price chart of a investment on the right side of this looks something like your blood pressure, a blood pressure read or a heartbeat read. It's never static. Your heartbeat's never exactly 32 for 5 minutes. It bounces up and down. It goes 31, 34, 33, 36, 32, whatever your heart rate is. That's a marathon runner's heart rate, but whatever. The idea is it's never static. It's bouncing. And that's kind of what you can see with these items on the right side of this spectrum. All right. So the next question is why invest? And we kind of touched on it, but number one, the primary goal would be to outpace inflation. You want to preserve the purchasing power of dollars you've earned and saved. You've worked hard to earn money, and then you've also worked hard to keep that money by saving it. Now we want to make sure that money can pay us back later. The second item here is you might earn more and accumulate more. Is it can actually compound, meaning the money you save can grow, and then the growth accelerates in a snowballing effect because the more money that is invested, the more money is available to grow. And then number three, saving alone might not be enough, right? So if you have certain spending goals or lifestyle goals, like buying a house or potentially retiring and having a stream of income for yourself to use, saving, meaning just spending less than you make, is probably not going to be sufficient. It may not be sufficient. And then number four here, and this is one I'd recommend being careful about, is the bigger your return, the less you have to set aside. If you can make more money on your money, you have less obligation or less need to save as much money. So I caution people about that because we don't want to plan. But like this fourth point here is essentially imagining ourselves making more money in the future and therefore having to be less disciplined or less cautious now. And that's a challenging frame of mind. So just something to be cautious of. Okay, so we've talked about what is investing and why to invest. The next question is where to invest. Again, this is intended to be a very broad overview, so we won't go too specific. But let's talk about a few options for what you call like the buckets of where you might invest. So you're going to have different account types that are basically buckets within which investments can be held. And by the way, like I said, again, disclaimer, this doesn't cover all types of investments. We're not talking necessarily about real estate here, private equity, or hedge funds. Those are different vehicles, different professionals work with that. But for today's video, we're thinking about different types of accounts that within which investments like cash, mutual funds, stocks, bonds, and real estate investment trusts can be held. So you have general purpose accounts. Those might be considered like brokerage accounts. Those are also maybe considered. Then you also have college savings accounts. Those are things like 529s or Coverdell ESAs. College savings accounts have specific tax benefits that try to incentivize you and I as individuals to save for our kids' education needs. And those tax benefits give us breaks that help us kind of save more money or get more out of our investments and savings. And then you have retirement accounts, and they function similar to these college savings accounts in that they give you tax breaks that will incentivize you to accumulate or save more over time so that you're thinking ahead for your needs when you're no longer working. And these account types offer the ability to invest within them. And you should think of these account types as buckets within which cash can be transferred into investments through purchasing the investments, but they can be held within the same bucket. It's an ownership bucket. Again, because this is broad in general, I'll do separate videos on specific account types, the functions and features, how to understand them, how to evaluate them. But as you think about where to invest, the most important thing is to know your plan. Like I said, you have to understand your time frame, how much money you'll need, what rate of growth you'll need, and when you'll need to exit that money out and what the tax consequences will be. And again, shout out to my first video, the 4 things you should consider before investing, because I talk about these things in a little more detail. But you have to have a plan and know, because if you just throw stuff aimlessly, you won't be optimizing, 1. And 2, you may arrive at the destination point where you need that money and not have enough or not know how to evaluate it or not know what things have changed along that time frame. So number one, solidify your goals. Number two, know what's needed. Number three, weigh the alternatives. That's understanding the risk reward spectrum and planning for that. And then number four, pick a path and be nimble and adjustable. Your whatever your path is, think of it like a Google Maps directions. You put a destination in, it sets you a route. But if there's an accident along the way or there's road closures, the route's going to change to accommodate the changing needs in order to get you to the destination. And that's a part of picking your plan and understanding and working with the plan. And that's where we'll end today, to keep this video under 10 minutes. So next time we'll talk about how to invest and some other small details that go along with that to give more flesh to this topic. But so today we covered what is investing, why is investing, and the basics of where to invest. And again, promise I'll do future videos that break these down into more specific cases. And again, I'm inviting your feedback. I'd love any topic suggestions or thoughts. If there's anything that I went through too quickly or brushed over and did not give enough talking or education on, please let me know. And again, I appreciate your time and attention, and your future self will thank you for watching these videos. Have a great day.